G'day guys, it's Mathil D here, and today I want to show you the absolute unstoppable, awesome, amazing power of the skill that is lightning strike. Get the fuck out of my way, air molecules. I'm trying to show off some sick lightning strike action here. It's a top tier, awesome skill that totally has no problems or issues with collision. So if you wouldn't mind moving now, nothing. I'm trying to showcase the skill. Fuck. So anyway, moving on. Lightning Strike's actually pretty good, all kidding aside. In this current day and age, with the right amount of ascendancy's gear and setup, it can perform really nicely, and there may be just a few gaps in the Lightning Strike arsenal that need filling by another skill, maybe some single target, or just an alternate setup of Frostblades or Spectral Throw. But in general, with the right amount of gear and the right maps, Lightning Strike is actually pretty tier 1, all kidding aside. It just will cause a bit of frustration in quite a lot of situations and takes a bit of getting used to. For the past couple of days I've been playing this Inquisitor CI full elemental lightning strike character, and it's taken me quite far. It's been very fun, and it's been very easy to play and level for the most part. As I said, you will just get kind of frustrated through certain collisions, certain map types, and having to swap to Frostblades or Spectral Throw, depending on what you're facing and what map you are running. So there will be certain maps and layouts where there's just too many doors, too many different levels, too many alleys, whatever, that just make Lightning Strike way too uncomfortable. And you're going to want to swap into Frostblades for those maps, and it's really not that big a deal. Frostblades in this setup actually works really nicely too. Now excuse the bit of lag that you're seeing on that particular map, it's just the stream was stuttering at the time. But anyway, what I actually mean is that essentially both Frostblades and Lightning Strike have certain gaps that they need filling, and together they make a pretty complete skill. So, or build even, I should say. So for open and sort of outdoor maps, I highly recommend Lightning Strike, and it works really well, and you won't feel bad using it. For indoor maps, you'll feel terrible with Lightning Strike quite a lot of the time, but with this sort of setup and with Frostblades, it actually feels really quite good, and the trash clear isn't that bad, at least once you get used to the skill, how to use it, where to click, all that sort of stuff. As you can see, the single target is nothing too impressive on Frostblades. It's still enough if you need it to be, especially because we have the Ancestral Warchief Totem to carry us, but you only really use Frostblades in general just for some map clear, and it complements your Lightning Strike quite nicely and is actually a lot more viable than I ever gave it credit for, but that's mostly just because you can scale a shitload of damage through something like Inquisitor and actually, make any skill just about good, except for things like Wild Strike, that just won't happen. But yeah, like the damage here is good, and Zero Run is a perfect example of when you want to swap out Lightning Strike on the trash for Frostblades, because with all those extra levels, with all those ramps, with all those corners and doors and shit, Lightning Strike feels awful. And Frostblades feels rather nice. But for the bosses here, and especially at Ziri herself, you pretty much have to go Lightning Strike. Now I fucked up a few of these fights here, but in general Ziri is really easy for Lightning Strike. Ideally, the best boss killer will be Spectral Throw, and when I try Uber in a day or two, I probably will be using Spectral Throw for the fights. But for general mapping, I've found that I like Lightning Strike a lot more these days than Spectral Throw. Not quite sure why that is, maybe it just hits a bit further and maybe even a bit harder. Plus I'm currently using Chain for my Lightning Strike, so it does clean up on the outdoor maps, or in certain situations a lot nicer than a Spectral Throw might, and it just Spectral Throw with an Inquisitor just doesn't feel like it has enough attack speed, I think, whereas Multi-Strike really bridges the gap between your attack speed on an Inquisitor when you feel like you don't have much. So Lightning Strike's been going really well for clear speed, and I'll show you what my setup is for both Frostblades and Lightning Strike in its current phase. First of all, take note that my character is a walking sex god, and that is achieved through basically pairing a crown of eyes with twisted horns for this effect of downright sexiness. In any case, character's level 89, Templar, man versus Pebbles. And I'll start right off the bat by saying I'm wearing Skyforths. I basically made this build CI and based around Lightning Strike, or this entire build, based around the fact that I had some Skyforths and people wanted me to use them. You don't really need these. All you'd do if you didn't have these is replace your Poacher's Mark on Curse on Hit with Assassin's Mark and replace your Granite with Diamond. Granite barely does anything for me right now anyway, and Diamond would fill out your power charges when you essentially don't have any, or your crit, I mean. And Assassin's Mark on your Curse on Hit to Herald of Ice, with Orb of Storms as well occasionally, would give you pretty reliable power charges, so you really wouldn't lose much anyway. And the stun threshold barely does anything for me right now regardless. The reduced mana reservation isn't that important either. I still have a fair amount of mana unreserved, even without that 6%, if you do the right stuff. 180 at the moment. And you can probably even grab another 4% there if you actually needed to, because you don't have Skyforths. So they're really just a luxury item, nowhere near a requirement. The rest of the gear, it's kind of neither here nor there. It's very much recycled from my Wander, so some of it's quite good, but that said, the lightning damage, the fizz damage there, you'd be much better off with a Wed roll for this build rather than that stuff, so it's not even that good. While the jewellery is still pretty nice, I'd much rather Wed rolls, and you still want some accuracy and some crit multi on your neck, or accuracy wherever you can get it. Of course we're using face breakers for crit multi, and a shield with spell power and a crown of eyes to try and scale some spell damage, even though I don't have too much. It's mostly coming from the shield and a bit from the passive tree. As well as that, 3 additional lightning strikes, projectiles on the enchant. So that gives me 10 projectiles, or 11 actually, instead of the usual 8, which really does fill out quite a larger arc for you when attacking. Now the actual setup itself is a lightning strike and multi-strike. Those are your two most important. I would then say weapon elemental damage. Basically, it depends on what you're fighting, but for general map clear, I've decided these days to use Chain, and that means you have to use a no quality lightning strike, because quality gives you 40% chance of pierce, and Chain cannot chain when it pierces. So you got to go with a no quality and Chain, and then an increased crit strikes and an added lightning. Both of these are somewhat up to you. You can build a bit differently and choose different gems in these slots, but bear in mind that will be pretty hard to color for your pure energy shield chest, so you may need a hybrid chest, or even an Atziri's Splendor is a great option too. But for boss fights, we end up going full pierce and the pierce setup with lightning strike, and that gives you a shitload of tooltip. Fully buffed, I'm at something like 200k DPS, and that's not even counting the pierce support, which is another 29 more projectile damage, because the tooltip only shows you the melee hit, not the projectile damage, which is all of what you're essentially scaling. You're never really meleeing anything. Likewise, there's a bit of extra proj nodes here, and I got some proj there, maybe somewhere else. No, nowhere else. Basically just a bit of proj there, and you do want an energy within here, but I haven't quite got around to doing that because I'm okay with my ES for the time being. When you're going Frostblades, just to clear maps, because it's a shit single target skill, don't use it for anything other than like trash. Essentially, you go Frostblades and attach Chain. Chain seems pretty damn necessary for Frostblades to do its job. Without Chain, it does still work, but you'll end up leaving stragglers, and it won't feel quite as nice. Just to supplement your lightning strike on the indoor maps. So I really do recommend using Chain with that. And my dagger here, it cost me 10 chaos. The dagger I was using before this cost me 1 chaos, and it had very similar damage. You're looking for a pretty fast dagger, bit of crit, and hopefully some LE damage on it too. Aside from that, it's been a bit of a struggle getting my whirling blades down, so I've got whirling blades and reduced mana with faster attacks. Has made a pretty fast whirling blades, and it doesn't cost too much mana anymore, only 12. That's just kind of important to keep it low for no regen maps, because those things are a bastard. My dagger itself has +2 to lightning gems, so I managed to slap a wrath in there, enlighten and discipline, so that gets you down to a fairly comfortable amount of mana. Herald of Ice does quite a bit of your cold damage as well as the shattering, and it keeps up whatever curse you put in here. Can be Poacher's, Assassin's Mark, or Warlord's Mark, entirely up to you. Got your Val Haste, Val Clarity setup as you always would, and the bulk of your single target damage is going to be Ancestral Warchief, paired with added Lightning, Conk Effect, and Wed. So he's got like 120k tooltip, something like that, when fully buffed, and he goes absolutely ham. He just about one-shots most bosses whenever he crits, and it's exactly what you should be doing for your single target, whether you're playing Spectral Throw, Lightning Strike, or Frostblades with this build. When looking at the actual build, we start as a Templar and we just travel through the ES nodes pretty much all the way around to pick up Valpact, get Ghost Reaver, get some nice dagger nodes, and you don't scale too much damage beyond that. Inquisitor himself, the important thing is critical strikes ignore enemy elemental resistances, so when I have my power charges up, I am sitting at something like, with power charges I am at something like 90 crit right now, and as high crit as possible is very important. Besides that, Instruments of Virtue, that gives you plenty of attack speed, also 80% spell damage, thanks to the attack damage getting converted from Crown of Eyes whenever you cast a spell. So as you can see, current tooltip 60k, drop an Orb of Storms, bam, 72k. So all you do is put down an Orb of Storms before you fight any single boss. For 4 seconds you're going to be boosted quite heavily. As well as that, Augury of Penitence is a very nice damage buff too. So there's a lot of damage scaling to go around on this build, and it's pretty easy to scale with the right stuff. As far as leveling the character goes, it was fairly comfortable most of the way. You get carried very hard on your single target by having an Ancestral Warchief with the 4-link, and as well as that, a very nice Val Lightning Strike setup on a 4-link hopefully, which should be, or at least I had it dual wielded on a tabular I think, so both the Lightning Strike and the Val Lightning Strike were each 5-linked with essentially, most importantly, Multi-Strike and Wed. Those are your two biggest damage multipliers, and Val Lightning Strike can kill pretty much every boss in the game as you're leveling very, very easily. So as you can see here, this is just the end of Cruel, I think. I'm just making my way through, barely doing anything but Val Lightning Striking every single boss. There are 3 charges to each Val Lightning Strike that you can get if you stack them up, and that makes for something like 9 hits if you use Multi-Strike as well, and then it's going to just dot tick, and it crits lots, and it ignores early resistances thanks to your Inquisitor passives, so it's really quite comfortable just leveling your way through this shit. Of course, for the end game, I've opted to actually drop Val Lightning Strike because while it is nice, I don't really want to be up close that melee for a lot of bosses, and I don't want to rely on a Val skill because it gets you in trouble in a lot of situations when you just don't have enough charges to kill bosses like a Core Malachite or like an Ibrit Siri. So I've really tried my best to not be fully reliant on it. It's just a fun leveling setup, or you can use it if you don't particularly care about all those bosses. But anyway, that was just somewhat of a fairly long video, I suppose, at the end, showing you the viability of both a Lightning Strike and Frostblades in certain situations. I'm surprised Frostblades did as well as it's doing, as well as Lightning Strike even. Just once you get enough damage scaling, chain on both of those becomes fairly viable, and that's pretty much what you need for both the skills to feel good when clearing maps. You can go without chain, you get more damage scaled, but it won't feel as good for effective clear speed. So keep that in mind. This is a CI version. You can probably play it as life if you built a bit differently by going to the bottom side of the passive tree, but I felt like the best way to scale this was going to be as an ES build. And of course, being low life would be way better than life because you could fit in another couple of auras and that would give you way more damage. But yeah, that's up to you if you want to spend another 7 to 10x on a Shavs. Lightning Strike, Frostblades, something to keep in mind. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.